If you're a church that has a sign, I don't mean like a normal sign, but one that has the interchangeable letters. Our church doesn't have signs like that. We just got basic, Mariners Church signs. But some churches have the signs where you put up messages to the community. And if you're a church like that, you've got to decide, what message are we going to send to the culture in which we live? What message are we going to communicate to the world? And so people sometimes take pictures of some of these funny church signs and post them on social media. Here's some of my favorite from the last couple of years. This church says, hey, bring your sin to the altar and drop it like it's hot. Credit to Snoop Dogg on that one. Or this one. This was a pretty serious, evidently some people stole some air conditioners from this church. And they said, whoever stole our AC units, keep one. It's hot where you're going. I'm not sure that's the message you want to send, but that's what they went with. And then sometimes people have asked me, hey, Eric, Mariners has an Ash Wednesday service, but I thought that was just Catholic churches. It's actually not only Catholic churches. Many Lutheran churches, as an example, do an Ash Wednesday service or remember the season of Lent, including this one. Lent is coming. Get your ashes here. They want you to they want you there. In this one, God loves you more than Kanye loves Kanye. And then people sometimes ask, how much of your budget should be for deferred maintenance? Like, you need to keep the building going. There needs to be some, because you don't want your church sign to look like this. You may accidentally pull into First Congregational Meth Church instead of Methodist Church because the sign faded. All right, this one, I don't think they realized what they were saying. Having trouble sleeping? Try one of our sermons. We will totally help. And so those churches, they made a decision on what message they wanted to send to the community, but we've made mistakes. Our church has made mistakes. This is an email that our youth ministry team sent out to parents earlier this year. I'm a parent of teenagers, so I got this email. We were in a teaching series called On the Table, where we put major topics on the table and just tackled them head on in our weekend worship services. We're actually going to do that again this coming January. But this is what our high school pastor sent out. Sex this weekend on the table. I called him like, man, Chris, dude, do you realize what you just sent out, man? I just couldn't believe it. Sex this weekend on the table. And he is so pure. Our high school pastor is so pure. Parents, you should feel so confident because he didn't even see it. And then I got off the phone with him and I felt like I'm the ungodly one. To the pure, all things are pure, and Chris is just a godly man. Some of you are thinking you want to volunteer for our proofreading team, and some of you are thinking, dang, that's my church, man. I love my church. So all of these churches had to decide what message do they want to send to the community about how they're living in the community. And you, if you are a Christian, you have to decide, what message do you want your life to send to the place where God has placed you? What kind of Christian do you want to be in the culture? And the book of Daniel is really helpful and insightful for us as we are studying, because Daniel is not living in the city of God, Jerusalem, where he was. He's been dragged to the city of man, Babylon. He's in exile, but he lives with conviction from the city of God and compassion for the city of man. And the New Testament says of you and of me, us Christians, that we're in exile too, that this isn't our ultimate home, that we really belong to the city of God, but we live in the city of man. And so how are we going to live here? Peter, one of Jesus' disciples, he actually writes to us and says, I urge you as strangers and exiles. Essentially, this is not your ultimate home. You're a stranger here, an exile here. And so live this way from the city of God, but you live in the city of man. And how are you going to live here? Well, there are some common approaches that Christians take today, and maybe you will see yourself in these approaches. There's compromising Carl. So Carl wants to fit in. He believes the best way for life and the easiest way for his life is to lower his standards and lower his convictions so he can fully assimilate into the culture. He laughs at every joke, goes to every party, participates in every conversation. He is no different from the world, therefore he makes no difference. If you want to make a difference, you have to be different. And Carl compromises. There is better than you, Betty. Betty, she also doesn't make a difference in this world. She doesn't make a difference at all on people who live in Babylon because she's never among people. She views herself as better than everyone else, so she's unable to influence other people. There's angry Andy. Andy is just so mad all of the time at Babylon or the place where he lives. If you look at his social media, it is just constant jabs at things that are going wrong in the culture. Andy is so angry that people at work often don't want to be around him. He's been passed over for promotions or not been hired because people have looked at his social media. He thinks it's because he's being persecuted. He'll say that, I'm being persecuted. Actually, it's because he's a jerk. That's why. Now, there is such a thing as Christian persecution, as Christians being persecuted, but that's not what's going down with Andy. It's because he's just so angry and a jerk towards people. Then there's Seesaw Sally. Seesaw Sally shows up at church on Sundays, hands lifted, sings, like just belts out praise to God on Sunday. And then on Monday, with the same mouth that she praised God, she curses people, she gossips about people, slanders people, drops F-bombs like crazy in conversations, but doesn't see the contradiction. In her mind, there's Sunday and then there's Monday. There's church and then there's work, and the two don't influence another at all. And then there's distinct Daniel. Now this is actually the historical Daniel. This is not just a fictitious name. This is the person that we are learning from in our study in Daniel. Daniel is in Babylon, the city of man, but he comes with the values from the city of God. He has conviction from God and yet compassion for people. He's different and distinct, so he makes a difference. He loves people well, but at the same time, he never takes his hands off the truth of God that he has believed and who he has believed. He is distinct Daniel. And clearly, this is who we want to learn from on how do we live in a world as an exile and a stranger. What kind of Christian do you want to be in this culture? So let's continue. Daniel chapter 2 is where we're going to be today. This is the second year of his reign. So Daniel's still a teenager, probably 16 years old at this point. In the second year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams that troubled him, and sleep deserted him. So the king gave orders to summon the magicians, mediums, sorcerers, and Chaldeans to tell the king his dreams. When they came and stood before the king, he said to them, I've had a dream and am anxious to understand it. Now notice the verse we read says that sleep deserted King Nebuchadnezzar, who's the king of Babylon. Sleep deserted him, though he was the most powerful man in the entire world at the time. He had everything but peace. There is a scene in the last season of Succession where two very powerful, wealthy, influential people have a conversation about how they're not sleeping. I don't sleep. Do you sleep? Nah, I don't sleep. What do you do? I don't sleep. I don't sleep. They don't sleep. They have everything but peace. And some of you are that way. Some of you have everything but peace. That was essentially the sign that we saw that one church having trouble sleeping. Let our sermons help. They messed the language up, but they were essentially saying, if you don't have peace, we have something that can help you, because you never will have the peace of God unless you have peace with God. And Nebuchadnezzar did not have peace. So he has this dream that is troubling him. Let's keep reading. Verse 4, the Chaldeans spoke to the king. May the king live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will give you the interpretation. The king replied to the Chaldeans, "My word is final. If you don't tell me the dream and its interpretation, you will be torn from limb to limb, and your houses will be made a garbage dump." Really, really nice guy, this guy here. Verse 6. "But if you make the dream and its interpretation known to me, you'll receive gifts, a reward, and great honor from me. So make the dream and its interpretation known to me." They answered a second time, "May the king tell the dream to his servants, and we will make the interpretation." The king replied, "I know for certain you try to gain some time because you see that my word is final. If you don't tell me the dream, there is one decree for you. You have conspired to tell me something false or fraudulent until the situation changes. So tell me the dream, and I will know that you can give me its interpretation." Now the Chaldeans answered the king. This is what they say to King Nebuchadnezzar. "No one on earth can make known what the king requests. Consequently, no king, however great and powerful, has ever asked anything like this of any magician, medium, or Chaldean. What the king is asking is so difficult that no one can make it known to him except the gods whose dwelling place is not with mortals." Because of this, the king became violently angry and gave orders to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. The decree was issued that the wise men were to be executed, and they searched for Daniel and his friends to execute them. So Daniel and his friends are going to get executed as well because they have been included in all of the wise men. Now, Nebuchadnezzar, he doesn't trust these Chaldeans. That's people who were interpreting dreams, or the magi, or the wise men of his day, because they're saying, "Hey, we can just give you the interpretation." And he's like, no. I want to know that you actually know my dream. I'm not telling you my dream. You have to tell me my dream, and then I'll know you can actually give me the interpretation. But you're going to see that he actually trusts Daniel. Here's how you know. The Chaldeans, the Magi, they ask for more time, and Nebuchadnezzar doesn't give them more time. But you're going to see that Daniel asks for more time, and he gives Daniel more time. There's something distinct in Daniel. There's something different in Daniel from everyone else. It's his character and his integrity, which causes Nebuchadnezzar to trust Daniel more than he trusts anyone else. Let's keep reading. So Daniel's about to get killed, he and his friends. Then Daniel responded with tact and discretion to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to execute the wise men of Babylon. He asked Arioch, the king's officer, "Why is this decree from the king so harsh?" Then Arioch explained the situation to Daniel. So Daniel went and asked the king to give him some time so that he could give the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house, and he told his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, that's now who's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, about the matter, urging them to ask the God of heavens for mercy concerning this mystery, so Daniel and his friends would not be destroyed with the rest of Babylon's wise men. The mystery, this is beautiful, check it out what God does. The mystery was then revealed to Daniel in a vision at night, and Daniel praised the God of heavens and declared. So here's a prayer that Daniel prays to God. May the name of God be praised forever and ever, for wisdom and power belong to him. He changes the times and seasons. He removes kings and establishes kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals the deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. I offer thanks and praise to you, God of my ancestors, because you have given me wisdom and power, and now you have let me know what we asked of you, for you have let us know the king's mystery. All right, let's stop here for a moment. This is beautiful. Because when Daniel receives clarity about what the dream and the interpretation of the dream is, the first thing he does is he worships God. I mean, I would have the temptation when my life is in danger, when I figure out what the dream means, to quickly run to King Nebuchadnezzar. But Daniel, he goes first to his king. He goes to the ultimate king, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and he thanks him and worships him. And then he goes to the king. So verse 24. Therefore, Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had assigned to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He came and said to him, "Don't destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me before the king, and I will give him the interpretation." Then Arioch quickly brought Daniel before the king and said to him, "I have found a man among the Judean exiles who can let the king know the interpretation." The king said in reply to Daniel, whose name was Belshazzar, "Are you able to tell me the dream I had and its interpretation?" Daniel answered the king, "No wise man, medium, magician, or diviner is able to make known to the king the mystery he asked about." This is so awesome. "But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has let King Nebuchadnezzar know what will happen in the last days. Your dream and the visions that came into your mind as you lay in bed were these." Let's stop here. There is a God in heaven, Daniel says. Daniel is filled with confidence, not in his ability, but he's filled with confidence because there's a God in heaven who has made known to Daniel what the dream is. There is a God in heaven. Daniel was filled with such confidence because he trusted the providence, the sovereignty, the kingship, not of Nebuchadnezzar, but of the God who is in heaven. But there is a God in heaven. The reason Daniel was filled with compassion towards the people of Babylon is because he really believed there is a God in heaven. And this God in heaven has put me exactly where he has placed me. And because this God who is in heaven loves people, he wants me to love these people in Babylon. I mean, you notice in the passage we read that Daniel's even advocating for the Babylonians not to be killed. He cares for them. He loves them. Why? Because he knows there's a God in heaven who has placed me here to be compassionate to these people. He knows there's a God in heaven, and this God who's in heaven is my God. He has made me his own. I am his son. I am his servant. And so I am going to be distinct and different in this world because there's a God in heaven who I belong to. There's a God in heaven. And this is true for you. You who have believed in Jesus, you have a God in heaven who has placed you exactly where he has placed you. In your neighborhood, in your school, in the city in which you live. He, in his wisdom, in his sovereignty, in his providence, chose the time you would live and where you would live. And when you trust the providence of God, his wisdom and sovereignty to arrange things to place you where he has placed you, you then have compassion on the people there because God in his providence has put you there. And when you understand that you have a God in heaven and this God in heaven has brought you into his kingdom, that you are in this kingdom of God's that will never perish, you have this confidence that you belong to him, that you can stand out in a culture that is not your ultimate home because he has made you his, and you carry his values, you carry his truth and his grace into the world in which he has placed you. See, trusting God's providence increases confidence. Will you say that with me? That will help get into your heart. Say it with me. Mariners Online, come on, say it with me. Trusting God's providence increases confidence. You notice the prayer that Daniel prayed? He's like, God, you're the one who sets up kings and you're the one who removes kings. You're the one who changes the seasons. You're the one who's in charge of everything. You're the one who has given me everything that I have. You're the one in charge. You're the one who's the king. You're the one who has providence. You're the one who is sovereign. And because Daniel trusted the providence of God with confidence, he was able to stand before the king and declare that he belongs to God. See, when you have deeply held belief in your heart that God is in charge and that this God in heaven loves you, your confidence will increase. Your confidence to live in this world that is not your ultimate home will actually increase if you really believe that you have a God in heaven who has set his affection on you. And you do have a God in heaven. And this God in heaven, he is so different from what the Babylonian Chaldeans, the magicians, the wise men of that day, what they believed about the gods. You saw what they said to King Nebuchadnezzar, right? They said, hey, King Nebuchadnezzar, only the gods know this, but they don't dwell with mortal people. Essentially, the gods are over there and they don't share information with us. They don't care for us. They don't live among us. But your God, O child of God, is very different. He has dwelt among us. God, the Son, Jesus the Christ, entered our world and dwelt here. He came here to be with you. He came here to love you. He's not distant over there. He's with you. He entered this world. He placed himself on a cruel Roman cross to take your sin and your shame from you. When you believed in him, you become one with him, his forever. He is with you now forever and ever. He's not over there. He's here. Your God in heaven loves you. He loves you. So if you ever doubt, does this God really care for me? Does this God really love me? Just remember the cross. Because on the cross, God proved his love for you by coming here to take away all of your sin and your shame. And it was taken away when you believed in him. If you've ever wondered, if you've ever said, man, things are such a mess in the world, or things are such a mess in my world, is there any way that this God who is in heaven is going to work it all out? You just remember the cross of what Jesus did for you, because there's no more evil moment in all of history than the cross. Because as Jesus died on the cross, all evil was converged on him. He was crucified by evil people. Jesus, the purely innocent one, the only one who has walked this earth without sin, pure and innocent, he was crucified. All of our sin was placed on him. It's the most evil moment, the darkest moment in history. And he was able to work that moment out to make you his son, his daughter. He worked the evil out of that moment and worked it around for your good and for my good, because he's the God who's sovereign over all. He's not only sovereign over all, he comes here for you to rescue you. There is a God in heaven. And when you have trust in the providence and the goodness of this God in heaven, your confidence increases to live in this world. So trusting God's providence increases your confidence. Now, the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had is a dream for you. This is actually also going to increase your confidence in and your trust in the providence of God. The dream, people geek out over this dream, and I don't have time to read the whole text, so let me just sum up the passage for you. Daniel tells Nebuchadnezzar, hey, I know the dream you had. Here's exactly what the dream was, and then I'll tell you the interpretation. You saw this massive statue in your dream, and there was a head of gold on the statue. There were chest and arms of silver. There was a stomach and thighs that were bronze, and then the legs were iron, and then the feet were iron and clay that were mixed together. That's the statue that you saw, and that is the statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw. So then Daniel lets him know the interpretation is that the kingdom that you have, Nebuchadnezzar, is the head of gold. The Babylonian kingdom is the head of gold, but your kingdom is not going to last. And then Daniel starts to talk about all of the other parts of the body. Now, scholars have and I love this, they actually say this part in the Bible has been fulfilled because earthly kingdoms that came after the Babylonian kingdom, they actually represented on this statue. I mean, here's an example of a prophecy in the scripture that is coming to fruition. Let me show you what Daniel says and what scholars say. So the head of gold is the Babylonian kingdom, but the Babylonian kingdom doesn't last because the Persians take over, and that is the chest of silver and the arms of silver, and it's a less powerful kingdom, and it doesn't last forever because then there's a bronze kingdom, and scholars say this is Alexander and the Greeks who rule the world for a season. In fact, scholars point out that it's really fascinating that the Greek kingdom, they were the ones who pioneered and innovated bronze weaponry. And so they used bronze spears and bronze weapons, and they ruled for a time. And then there's the Roman kingdom, which are the legs of iron so strong that they crush all of the other kingdoms. And then the Roman kingdom, that doesn't last forever. There then is a feet of iron and clay, and that is the divide. Many scholars believe the divided kingdoms. Now, some get really detailed. Some scholars and some of you like geek out on this stuff, and so I've heard people say, okay, so there's 2 legs and 2 feet. There's like 10 toes. So like, who's the 10 toes? Like, is America a toe? Is America the big toe or the pinky toe? And if America's the big toe, then like, is Southern California the toenail? And then this little piggy went all the way home. I mean, we have to be really careful that we don't go too far into the statue, because the point of the statue is actually bigger than the statue itself. Don't miss the sermon that God is preaching because you're so enamored with the statue. Because the real point of the dream comes next. In the dream, Nebuchadnezzar sees that a stone breaks off and crushes the entire statue, and all of the kingdoms are blown away. They are no more. That they all go away. So really, it ends up not even mattering which kingdom is the toes or if those are different kingdoms, because they're all gone. None of them last, but the stone is the kingdom that is going to last forever. In fact, look at Daniel chapter 2, verse 44. The God of the heavens will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. So the dream that Nebuchadnezzar has is about all of these kingdoms, and Daniel says, this one gets replaced by this one, this one gets replaced by this one, this one gets replaced by this one, but then there's a kingdom that starts. And this kingdom is so powerful that it fills the entire earth. This kingdom is so powerful that it will never be destroyed. Do you know what kingdom this is? This is the kingdom that Jesus started. Jesus entered this world under the oppression of the Roman kingdom, which is no more. But the kingdom Jesus began is a kingdom that the gates of Hades will not be able to overcome. The kingdom that Jesus began is a kingdom that pulls people together from every single tribe, tongue, and nation. The kingdom that Jesus begins is a kingdom that is going to fill the whole earth, as every single inch of God's entire creation will be filled with the glory of God. The curse will be no more. Everything one day will be made new and right. This kingdom, the kingdom that Jesus started, is the everlasting kingdom. All the kingdoms of this world, they come and they go. God, you're the one who sets up kings and removes kings. But the kingdom that Jesus began when he entered this world 2,000 years ago is the kingdom that is going to last forever. And it's the kingdom that those of us who have believed in Jesus have entered. We're now a part of the rule of God. We belong to him. This increases our confidence because the providence of God has invited us into his eternal, everlasting kingdom. Peter, one of Jesus' disciples, picks up on this imagery of the stone that crushes every other kingdom. And he basically says, he does say that the stone is Jesus, that Jesus is the one who starts the everlasting kingdom. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 7, the stone that the builders rejected, this one has become the cornerstone. So the stone crushes the other kingdoms, but for those of us who believe this stone, Jesus, the rock, the stone, he has become the cornerstone of our lives, the one who gives us peace and joy, the one who gives us significance, the one who breathes meaning into every detail of our lives, the cornerstone of our lives, the one who has given us grace and mercy and forgiveness, the cornerstone of our lives. See, Jesus, his kingdom crushes every other kingdom, and his kingdom is the only king that remains, the only kingdom that remains. And our earthly kingdoms that we build, they will get crushed too. Some of us are spending our lives trying to build a kingdom. Maybe you're trying to build a kingdom of wealth. It's not going to last. Or maybe you're attempting to build a kingdom of influence, or a kingdom with your career, or a kingdom of all of your dreams, or a kingdom with your relationships. Those come and go. But the kingdom of Jesus lasts forever. And he is your cornerstone. He's your cornerstone. And so you now live in a world, but you can live in a world with confidence because Jesus, his kingdom lasts forever. And this Jesus not only crushes all of the other kingdoms, but this Jesus, the stone that crushed the other kingdoms, is your cornerstone. He's your cornerstone. All of the other things that you were tempted to place your hope and your trust and your confidence in, those things don't last. But Jesus lasts forever, and he's invited you to be in his kingdom, and he has become your cornerstone, the foundation of your life. He is with you. He is the God in heaven who cares for you. And so you, as you trust his providence, can live with confidence in a world that is so temporary. Jesus is your cornerstone. Hey, I'm so glad that you joined us for our service today. And I hope and pray that God used this message to encourage you right where you are. I'd love if you hit the subscribe button, because then you could get the next alert for whenever we have services and when we ever offer content here on YouTube. So subscribe and join us for Mariners Online.